The battlefield was silent now. Only the sound of the wind moving across the burned ground. Smoke still rose from the wreckage of machines and broken armor. Ethan walked slowly, his boots crunching on metal pieces and ash. He was just a mechanic, not a soldier. He had come after the fight, hoping to find tools or parts he could use. But then, near a broken tank, he saw something that made him stop. There was a figure lying on the ground, half covered in dust and smoke. At first, he thought it was just another fallen soldier. But then he noticed something. The armor was still glowing faintly, and the chest plate was rising and falling, weak but alive. Ethan knelt beside her. It was a woman, her face pale, a few strands of blonde hair falling across her cheek. Her armor was cracked, blackened from fire, but there was something different about it. Strange marks and symbols carved into the metal, not like anything he had seen before. He hesitated. The marks looked like they belonged to the enemy side. If anyone found him near her, they would think he was a traitor. But then she let out a soft sound, a weak breath, almost like a whisper. Ethan looked around. No one was there. He told himself he should leave, but something inside him didn't let him move. Instead, he reached out and gently touched the edge of her armor. It was hot, almost burning. "I can help you," he said quietly, even though she couldn't hear him. He pulled out his small repair kit from his bag. He was used to fixing things. Engines, vehicles, drones, not people. But this armor looked like it was alive, like it was part of her body. He carefully started to work, cleaning the cracked parts, connecting a few loose wires, using what little tools he had. Every spark of light from his tools reflected on her calm but tired face. After a few minutes, the small lights on her shoulderpiece blinked again. A faint blue glow. Ethan felt a strange relief. "That's it," he whispered to himself. "Just stay alive." He worked faster now, ignoring the cold wind that cut across the battlefield. As he repaired one section, he noticed something else inside the armor. Not just metal, but small organic strands, like veins of light. This was not normal technology. He was about to check her helmet when suddenly her hand moved. Ethan froze. Her fingers tightened around his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes opened, and bright, sharp blue glowing faintly. He felt his heart jump. For a second, she just looked at him, confused, maybe afraid. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Be careful." Ethan leaned closer, trying to hear her clearly. "What?" he asked softly. Her lips trembled as she spoke again. "They will come. For you too." Before he could ask anything, her hand fell back and her eyes closed again. Ethan stared at her, trying to understand what she meant. Who were they? Why him? He looked around, suddenly aware of how quiet everything had become. The air felt heavy. He decided he couldn't leave her there. He needed to take her somewhere safe. Maybe back to his workshop on the edge of the old city. But as he reached to lift her, something moved in the distance. Ethan froze. Between the broken machines, a shadow flickered. Tall, human-shaped, watching. He couldn't see a face, but the way it stood made his skin crawl. He quickly turned off his repair light and crouched beside the woman. The wind carried the faint sound of metal footsteps. Someone was out there searching. Maybe they were soldiers, or maybe something worse. He didn't know. Ethan's heart pounded. He waited, holding his breath, until the footsteps faded again into the smoke. He looked down at the girl. Whoever she wasn't safe here. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and whispered, "You warned me. Now it's my turn to be careful." He lifted her as gently as he could. She was lighter than he expected, the armor cold but smooth against his arms. As he carried her away from the battlefield, the smoke behind them began to move again, as if something was following. Far in the distance, a faint red light blinked on and off, scanning the ruins. It stopped where they had been moments ago. The shadow turned in that direction and started to walk. Ethan didn't look back. He only knew one thing. Whatever danger she had brought with her, it had already started to follow him. He didn't know her name, or what those strange symbols meant, or why she wore armor that seemed alive. But her warning echoed in his mind with every step he took. "Be careful. They will come for you too." The words felt less like a warning and more like a promise. And as the night fell, the wind carried the sound of distant engines starting again. The hunt had already begun. The night was cold and silent when Ethan reached the edge of the ruined city. He had walked for hours, carrying the girl in his arms. Every step echoed in the empty streets. The lights from old buildings flickered weakly, and the sky above was dark with clouds. Ethan's workshop stood at the corner of an old street, a small place made of rusted metal walls and broken windows. It wasn't much, but it was home. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped inside. The room was filled with the smell of oil and burnt circuits. Machines and spare parts were scattered everywhere. Ethan gently laid the girl on his work table. Her armor was still cracked, but at least she was breathing now. For a long moment, he just stood there looking at her. Her face looked peaceful, almost too peaceful for someone who had just survived a battlefield. Her armor shimmered faintly under the workshop light, silver and blue lines that pulsed like veins. Ethan wanted to know who she was, but he was afraid to wake her. He began to check his tools again. He needed to finish repairing her armor before morning. If anyone found her here, it would mean trouble. He pulled off a damaged shoulder plate and placed it on his bench. The inner parts of the armor looked strange, not human technology at all. Tiny energy veins pulsed under the metal like living things. Ethan touched one with his tool and it reacted instantly, glowing brighter for a moment. He stepped back in shock. "What are you?" he whispered under his breath. Suddenly, the girl's voice came, soft but firm. "Don't touch it." Ethan turned quickly. She was awake now, her blue eyes watching him. She tried to sit up, but the pain made her wince. Ethan rushed to help, but she raised her hand. "I'm fine," she said, breathing slowly. "You shouldn't move," Ethan told her. "Your armor's still damaged. You were half dead when I found you." She looked around, studying the small room. "Where am I?" "My workshop," Ethan replied. "You're safe. For now." The girl's eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't have brought me here," Ethan frowned. "You were dying out there. I couldn't just leave you." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the armor plate he had removed. "You touched the core," she said quietly. "That was dangerous." "Dangerous?" Ethan repeated, "and why?" "It's just armor." "It's not just armor," she interrupted. "It's alive. And if it sensed you, then others can too." Ethan froze. "Others?" She met his eyes. "They will come for it. And for you." Her words made the room feel colder. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. "Who are they?" She looked down for a moment before speaking. "Soldiers, hunters, machines. It doesn't matter what name you give them. Once they track the signal, they won't stop." Ethan didn't know what to say. He looked out the small window. The city was quiet, but somewhere out there the faint hum of engines could be heard. "Why are they after you?" he asked. The girl hesitated, her eyes showing a flash of sadness. "Because I used to be one of them." Ethan stared at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. "You were one of them?" "Yes," she said softly. "But I escaped. I saw what they did to people. I couldn't be part of it anymore." She looked at him, her expression hard. "And now they will destroy anyone who helps me." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. He didn't know why, but he believed her. Something in her eyes, that mix of strength and fear, felt too real to doubt. "Then we'll hide you," he said. "I'll disconnect whatever signal your armor is sending." She shook her head slowly. "You can't, it's part of me." Ethan frowned. "Part of you? You mean it's connected?" She nodded. "I was made to wear it. It's bonded to my body. Removing it would kill me." Ethan took a slow breath. "Then we'll find another way. We'll block the signal somehow." Before she could answer, there was a loud knock on the door. Both of them froze. Ethan whispered, "Stay quiet." He quickly covered her with a blanket and moved toward the door. Another knock, louder this time. "Open up, military patrol," a voice shouted. Ethan's heart raced. He looked back at the girl. Her blue eyes were wide now. She mouthed the words, "Don't let them see me." He swallowed hard and opened the door just a little. Two soldiers stood outside, their faces hidden behind helmets. One of them shined a flashlight into the room. "We're searching the area," the soldier said. "There have been reports of enemy survivors. Have you seen anyone unusual?" Ethan shook his head. "No, sir. Just me." The soldier looked past him, scanning the room. Ethan kept his hand on the door, blocking the view of the work table. The soldier's light stopped for a second on the broken armor pieces lying nearby. "What's that?" "Old scrap," Ethan said quickly. "I fix machines. Been picking up junk from the battlefield." The soldier stared at him for a moment longer, then nodded. "All right. Stay alert. If you see anyone, report it." Ethan closed the door slowly after they left. The moment he turned around, the girl sat up again, her eyes full of fear. "They know," she whispered. They'll come back. Ethan walked closer, lowering his voice. Then we move before they do. She looked at him for a long time, as if trying to understand why he was helping her. You shouldn't do this, she said softly. It will only get you killed. Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe, but you warned me to be careful. I'm just listening. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder in the distance. The hunt had already begun. The city was quiet again after the patrol left, but Ethan could still feel the tension in the air. Every noise sounded louder, every shadow looked dangerous. He turned off all the lights in his workshop except one small lamp that barely lit the room. The girl, still weak but awake now, watched him silently from the work table. Ethan sat down across from her, rubbing his tired eyes. You said they'll come back, he murmured. So we can't stay here for long. But I need to know who I'm helping. The girl didn't answer right away. Her fingers moved slowly over the broken pieces of her armor. The metal seemed to respond to her touch, glowing faintly. My name is Lyra, she said finally, her voice soft but steady. Lyra, Ethan repeated quietly. And who exactly are they? She looked up at him with her piercing blue eyes. Soldiers from the Human Defense Forces. The ones you call protectors, Ethan frowned. That doesn't make sense. Why would they hunt their own soldier? Lyra gave a small, sad smile. Because I'm not their soldier anymore. I was made to be one of them, but I stopped obeying. Made? Ethan asked. You mean trained? She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. No, created. The word hung heavy in the air. Ethan stared at her, confused. Created? You mean you're not human? Lyra didn't answer directly. She turned her gaze away, her face half hidden by her hair. I was part of a project. A living weapon, they called it. The armor you see, it's not separate from me. It's part of my body. They built soldiers like me to fight their wars faster, smarter, colder. Ethan felt a chill run through him. So, you're half machine? She nodded slightly. Something like that. But I'm not the only one. There were others. They wanted to make an army of us. But when I realized what we were doing, what they were turning us into, I escaped. He took a deep breath, trying to understand. And now they want you back. They don't want me back, she said quietly. They want me erased. Silence filled the room. Ethan could hear the faint hum of electricity coming from her armor. It wasn't loud, but it had a strange rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Finally, Ethan spoke again. You could have told me this earlier. Lyra looked at him sharply. Would you have helped me if I did? He didn't answer. She was right. He wasn't sure he would have. Ethan leaned back in his chair, sighing. You look human. You talk like one. I can't see the difference. Lyra's expression softened slightly. That's what scares them the most. He looked down at his hands, then at her again. You said your armor's alive. When I fixed it, I felt something. Like it was watching me. It was, she said simply. The armor protects me, but it doesn't trust anyone else. You touched its core when you repaired it. That's why it marked you. Marked me? Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What does that mean? Lyra's eyes flickered with worry. It means you're connected now. The system knows you. If the hunters scan for my signal, they might find you too. Ethan laughed nervously. Great, so now I'm on their list. Lyra looked down, guilt showing on her face. I didn't mean for this to happen. You should have left me there. Ethan shook his head. I couldn't. She raised her eyes to him, confused. Why? He hesitated, then said, Because you asked me to be careful. And you sounded human. I couldn't let someone die who still cared enough to warn a stranger. For a moment, the tension between them softened. Lyra's eyes shimmered in the dim light, and she looked almost vulnerable. You're strange, Ethan, she whispered. Humans don't usually help things they fear. Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe I'm just bad at following orders. Before either of them could say more, a sudden noise came from outside. The sound of engines again, closer this time. Both of them froze. Ethan rushed to the window and peeked through a small crack. 3 dark vehicles were moving slowly down the street, their headlights off. Lyra's expression turned cold. They're here. Ethan's pulse quickened. How did they find us so fast? She touched the side of her armor, her face tightening. They traced the core. When you activated it earlier, it sent a pulse. Ethan swore under his breath, so they were never far away. He turned off all the lights again and crouched beside her. We need to move now. Lyra shook her head. I can't fight yet. The armor isn't fully repaired. Then I'll carry you again. Ethan said, reaching for her. But Lyra grabbed his wrist, stopping him. No. If they see you with me, they'll kill you. I already told you, he whispered fiercely. I'm not leaving you behind. Outside, the vehicle stopped. The low hum of scanning drones filled the air. Red lights moved across the street like eyes searching in the dark. Lyra's voice trembled slightly. You don't understand. They'll destroy everything around us just to get to me. Ethan looked her in the eyes. Then we give them nothing to destroy. He reached for his bag, pulling out a small EMP device he had built years ago. This might buy us a few minutes. When it goes off, we run. Lyra watched him, something like trust flickering in her eyes for the first time. You shouldn't be doing this, she said softly. I lied to you, Ethan. I said I didn't remember much about who I am, but I remember everything. And I know that helping me could cost you your life. Ethan smiled faintly, even as fear twisted in his chest. Then let's make sure it's worth the risk. Outside, the red lights were growing brighter. The sound of footsteps echoed closer. Lyra took a deep breath and whispered, Then be careful. The EMP detonated with a silent flash, plunging the street into darkness. And together, they ran, into the shadows where danger waited and truth was only beginning to unfold. The city was silent again, but only for a moment. After the flash of the EMP, all the lights around Ethan's workshop went dark. The drones that hovered in the sky dropped one by one, sparks flying as they hit the ground. For the first time in hours, there was silence. Ethan held Lyra's hand as they ran through the narrow streets, their shadows flickering in the moonlight. The smell of smoke and rust filled the air. He didn't know where they were going, only that they needed to keep moving. Lyra's armor glowed faintly under her cloak, casting a soft blue light that pulsed with her heartbeat. They reached an old subway tunnel hidden behind a collapsed building. Ethan pushed aside some debris and helped Lyra down into the darkness. The tunnel was cold and smelled of dust and oil, but it was safe, at least for now. He turned on a small flashlight and looked at her. She was breathing heavily, her armor cracked again from the run. We need to rest, Ethan said quietly. Lyra nodded weakly and sat against the wall. You used an EMP, she said. That will only stop them for a few minutes. They'll adapt. Ethan knelt beside her, trying to repair a small tear in her shoulder plate. Then we'll move before they do. He pulled a small toolkit from his bag and started working. The moment his tool touched the armor, it reacted, glowing brighter, humming softly. Lyra flinched and grabbed his wrist. Stop, she said sharply. Ethan looked at her, confused. I'm just trying to fix it. Her eyes were wide now, the glow from her armor reflecting in them. It's reading you, she whispered. What do you mean, reading me? The armor scans everything it touches. It's part of its defense system. It's trying to understand you and decide if you're a threat. Ethan slowly pulled his hand away. And what happens if it decides I am? Lyra looked down. Then it kills you. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The sound of water dripping echoed in the tunnel. Ethan stared at the strange blue veins running through her armor. How do you live with something like that? He asked softly. Lyra's voice was calm but sad. I didn't have a choice. When they made me, they said the armor was protection. But it's more like a cage. It obeys commands I can't control. Sometimes I feel like it's still theirs, not mine. Ethan looked at her closely. You said you escaped. How did you manage that if the armor obeys them? She smiled bitterly. Because I lied to it, Ethan blinked. You lied to your armor? I told it I was following my mission and to destroy all threats. Then I decided the real threat was the people who created me. Ethan couldn't help but stare. The courage in her voice was quiet but powerful. You turned against your own creators. Lyra nodded slowly. I couldn't watch them kill innocent people anymore. They said we were saving humanity, but all I saw were cities burning. Ethan continued working carefully, trying not to trigger another reaction from her armor. You're not what they made you to be, are you? She met his gaze. No, I'm something they didn't plan for, something they fear. Suddenly, a faint vibration ran through the ground beneath them. Lyra's head snapped up. They're scanning again, she whispered. They've reactivated, Ethan cursed under his breath. We just got here. Lyra stood up slowly, her armor pieces shifting and locking back into place. The blue light along her body grew brighter. Ethan could see tiny streams of energy moving under her skin, as if the armor was alive. It's repairing itself, he said in awe. Lyra nodded, her voice distant. It's trying to protect me, but it doesn't trust you. Ethan frowned. I'm the one who saved you. I know, she said softly, but it only understands one thing. Enemies or allies. And right now, it's not sure which one you are. Before Ethan could respond, a faint metallic sound came from deeper in the tunnel. Footsteps, slow, measured. Ethan turned off the flashlight immediately. They both froze. Through the darkness, the faint red glow of a drone's eye appeared. Then another, then 3 more. The hunters had found them. Lyra's armor came alive. The blue light turned white, and a soft hum filled the tunnel. Stay behind me, she said. Ethan shook his head. You can't fight in this condition. But she didn't listen. Energy rippled across her armor, forming a glowing shield. When the first drone fired, the blast bounced off her defense, lighting up the tunnel walls. The second shot came, stronger. Lyra raised her arm, and the armor absorbed the hit, glowing brighter. Ethan ducked behind an old pillar, shielding his face from the sparks. He could hear the faint voice of the armor's AI whispering through the noise, speaking in a language he couldn't understand. Lyra turned to him between the blasts. You have to run. I'm not leaving you, he shouted back. Her armor responded with a surge of light, creating a shockwave that threw the drones backward. The tunnel filled with smoke and the smell of burning metal. When the noise stopped, only silence remained. Ethan stepped out, coughing. The drones were destroyed, pieces of metal glowing on the floor. Lyra stood in the middle, her armor cracked and smoking. She fell to her knees. Ethan ran to her side and caught her before she hit the ground. Her eyes were dim now, her voice weak. I told you. It doesn't trust you, but it protected you anyway. Ethan looked at her, confused. Why would it do that? Lyra gave a faint, tired smile. Because I told it a new command. She took a shaky breath. To protect you, as it protects me. Her eyes fluttered shut, and the armor's light slowly faded to a soft glow. Ethan held her tightly, his mind racing. The enemies were still out there, but now something else had changed. The armor no longer saw him as a threat. It saw him as part of her, and that made him dangerous too. In the distance, deep within, the tunnel's new red lights appeared, dozens of them moving fast. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. The tunnels were dark, cold, and endless. Ethan walked carefully, carrying Lyra on his back. Her armor was dim now, the blue light reduced to a faint pulse at her chest. She was still alive, but weak. Every sound echoed around them, dripping water, distant creaks of metal, the low hum of the city above. He didn't know where he was going. All he knew was that they had to keep moving. The hunters would return, and next time, there would be more of them. After what felt like hours, he finally found an old maintenance room deep underground. It smelled like dust and oil, but it was hidden, safe. Ethan laid Lyra down gently on a pile of old blankets and turned on his small lamp. Her face looked pale, almost fragile. The strong soldier he had met on the battlefield now looked human, almost ordinary. He sat beside her, cleaning his tools quietly. After a few minutes, Lyra stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light. We made it? She asked weakly. For now, Ethan said, smiling a little. You really know how to get people in trouble. She gave a faint laugh, though it hurt her to breathe. You didn't have to come with me. Ethan shrugged. I didn't have a choice. You said they'd come for me too. Lyra's expression softened. You could have run. I could have, Ethan said quietly. But I didn't. Silence filled the room for a moment. The distant sound of machinery above them echoed softly. Ethan turned to her again. What happens if they find us? Lyra looked down. Then they'll take me back. They'll erase everything I am. My memories, my voice, everything that makes me different. And they'll kill you. Ethan frowned. So we keep running. There has to be a safe place. There is no safe place, Lyra said. They control the cities, the skies, even the underground networks. They will find me no matter where I go. Ethan stood up, pacing the small room. Then we fight. Lyra looked up at him. You can't fight them, Ethan. They were built for war. I fought machines before, he said. I can build things, break things, I'll find a way. Lyra smiled weakly. You're stubborn. Ethan chuckled softly. People tell me that a lot. He sat down again beside her. Tell me something, he said quietly. Before all of this, before the armor, what did you want? Lyra looked surprised by the question. For a long time, she didn't answer. Then she said, I wanted peace. I wanted to see the world without orders or missions. Just to live. Ethan nodded slowly. Then maybe that's what we'll do. Just live. For a while. Lyra gave him a long look, her blue eyes reflecting the lamp's light. You think it's that simple? He smiled faintly. Maybe it is. For the first time since he met her, Lyra smiled, a real smile. It was small, almost hidden, but it made her look human again. Hours passed quietly. Ethan dozed off in the corner, his head resting on his arm. Lyra watched him, the faint glow of her armor flickering softly. He had risked everything for her, a stranger he didn't even understand. She didn't know why, but that thought warmed something deep inside her. Then suddenly the light from her armor brightened. A soft beeping sound filled the room. Lyra's eyes widened. The core inside her armor was reactivating. Ethan woke up immediately. What's happening? Lyra sat up quickly, pressing her hand against her chest. No, it's too soon. The armor's connecting again. It's sending out a signal. Ethan's face went pale. They'll find us. She looked at him, fear flashing in her eyes. You have to leave, Ethan. He shook his head. Not again. This time it's not a choice, she said sharply. The signal is locked. They'll track it in minutes. Ethan stood firm. Then I'll destroy it. You can't. Lyra grabbed his arm. It's tied to my heart rate. If you destroy the core, I die. He froze. Then tell me how to stop it. Her voice softened. You can't stop it. The only way to break the connection is to disconnect me from the system completely. Ethan stared at her, realizing what she meant. You mean, kill the signal? Kill you? Lyra looked down, silent. He shook his head violently. No, there has to be another way. She reached up and placed her hand gently on his cheek. Her touch was cold but soft. You've done enough, she whispered. You gave me something they couldn't. A choice. Let me make mine. Ethan's throat felt tight. Lyra, don't... She smiled sadly. You helped me remember what it feels like to be human. Now let me protect you like you protected me. Before he could stop her, she stood and pressed her hand to the armor's center. The blue light began to surge, spreading across her body. The hum of power grew louder, shaking the walls. Lyra, stop! Ethan shouted, trying to grab her hand. She looked at him one last time, her voice soft but clear. You told me not to face them alone. I'm not. You're with me. And with that, the light exploded outward, a wave of blue energy that filled the tunnel and raced toward the surface. The machines hunting them froze, their systems collapsing. When the light faded, Lyra fell into Ethan's arms, her armor dim again. She was still alive, but weak, her breathing shallow. Ethan held her close, whispering, You're not done yet. We're not done. Outside, the night was still, but in the distance, new lights appeared on the horizon, ships descending from the clouds. The next wave was coming. Ethan looked down at Lyra, her hand resting over his. We'll face them, he said quietly, together. Her eyes opened slightly and she smiled faintly. Then be careful. And with those words, she drifted back into sleep, the soft hum of her armor, the only sound in the dark. The tunnels were no longer silent. The moment Lyra's armor released that wave of blue energy, the old machines deep under the city started to come alive again, Rusted gears turned for the first time in years. Lights flickered in dark corners, and somewhere far above, the sound of engines roared through the night sky. Ethan held Lyra tightly, feeling her heartbeat against his arm. She was alive, barely, but her pulse was weak and fading. The blue glow across her chest was soft now, pulsing in rhythm with each slow breath she took. He looked around the room, panic slowly rising. The metal walls trembled with distant vibrations. The signal she had released didn't just destroy the hunters. It had also awakened something else. Something bigger, Ethan whispered. Lyra, what did you do? Her eyes opened halfway, unfocused but glowing faintly. I broke the chain, but it called them too. Who? He asked. The Sentinels, she murmured. The ones who built us. Before Ethan could ask more, a deep metallic sound echoed through the tunnels, like thunder rolling underground. Dust fell from the ceiling as the ground vibrated. Somewhere close, heavy steps approached, slow and steady. Ethan grabbed his bag and tools, his heart pounding. He had to move her before those things reached them. He lifted her gently, wrapping her arm over his shoulder. She groaned softly, pain flashing across her face, but she didn't resist. The hallway outside was narrow and dimly lit. Pipes lined the walls, dripping with water. Ethan moved carefully, trying not to make noise. Every step echoed, but the sound of the approaching machines was louder. Mechanical, rhythmic, like dozens of metal giants marching in sync. Lyra whispered, "They can track the energy from my core. You have to get me to a dead zone, somewhere without power lines, no signal." Ethan nodded. "Where?" "Old sectors," she said weakly. "Past the ruins of District 9, no one goes there anymore." Ethan tightened his grip. "Then that's where we're going." He followed the map on his wristband, an old device from before the war. The roads were collapsed and the tunnels twisted like a maze. The only light came from the faint blue glow of Lyra's armor and his small lamp. As they moved deeper, the tunnel split into two paths, one leading upward, the other down into darkness. Ethan hesitated. The sound of metal footsteps echoed from above. Without thinking, he turned down the darker path. The air grew colder, heavier. The walls dripped with old oil and rust. They passed old posters half torn from the walls, reminders of a time when humans still lived freely. After a while, Lyra spoke again, her voice faint. "You shouldn't have stayed with me." Ethan shook his head. "Stop saying that. You could have gone back. Lived your life. Now you'll be hunted too." He smiled faintly, not looking at her. "I told you before, I don't leave things broken. And I'm not leaving you." For a moment she said nothing. Then softly she whispered, "You're a fool, Ethan." "Yeah," he said, smiling, "but a loyal one." They kept walking until the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. Rusted machines hung from the ceiling, and broken lights blinked weakly. In the center of the room stood a huge metallic door, its control panel still glowing. Ethan placed Lyra down gently and examined the panel. "Maybe this leads to the old transport line. We could get through and find a safe path out." Lyra nodded slowly. "Hurry, they're close." He started working on the door, using his tools to bypass the ancient lock. Sparks flew as he connected wires, his fingers trembling slightly. Behind him, the tunnel filled with the sound of approaching footsteps again. Louder this time, closer. Lyra forced herself to sit up, her hands trembling. The blue light in her armor grew brighter again. She reached toward her weapon, a small blaster built into her arm. But it was dead. "Almost there," Ethan said, teeth clenched. Then a voice echoed through the tunnel, deep mechanical cold. "Subject 7 Lyra detected. Termination in progress." Ethan froze. The voice was everywhere, vibrating through the walls. He turned and saw red lights glowing in the distance. Eyes. "Dozens of them." "Ethan," Lyra shouted. "Open the door now." He hit the final switch, and the giant metal door hissed open just enough for them to slip through. He grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her inside. The moment they crossed, he slammed the emergency lever. The door closed with a heavy thud, sealing them in darkness. For a few seconds there was silence, then loud crashes as the sentinels began slamming against the door. Metal bent and groaned. They didn't have long. Ethan turned on his lamp. The space beyond the door was massive, an old underground transport hub long forgotten. Rusted trains rested on tracks covered in dust. Lyra looked around weakly. This place? It's from before the war. Then it's perfect, Ethan said. No signals, no trackers, but Lyra shook her head. You don't understand. This place wasn't just for transport. It was for creation. What do you mean? She pointed toward a broken chamber at the far end of the room. That's where they built us. The hybrids. Ethan stared at her, realization dawning. You mean, you were made here? She nodded slowly. And if the Sentinels know this place still exists? Her voice trailed off as the ground trembled again. The door behind them began to crack under the pressure. Ethan grabbed her hand. Then we destroy it before they get through. Lyra looked at him, her eyes glowing bright now. That would mean destroying everything, including me. Ethan hesitated. The pounding on the door grew louder. Ethan, she said softly, you have to make a choice. He stared into her glowing blue eyes, torn between fear and something deeper. Outside, metal screamed as the Sentinels broke through. Inside, Ethan's hand hovered over the control panel for the self-destruct system. Lyra whispered, be careful. Once you start it, there's no turning back. And then, the door behind them cracked open. The first red light shone through the smoke. Ethan looked at Lyra one last time. Then let's finish this. He pressed the button. The chamber filled with light. The room exploded with light as Ethan hit the button. Alarms began to echo across the ancient transport hub. Red warning lights flashing on the walls that hadn't glowed in years. The ground trembled beneath them, the floor cracking open as old power lines came to life again. Ethan covered Lyra's body with his arm as sparks rained from above. The massive steel door behind them finally shattered. From the smoke, tall figures stepped through. Sentinels, their eyes burning bright red, their metal bodies smooth and sharp. Each movement they made sounded heavy and final, like the ticking of a giant clock. Lyra's voice was weak but clear. They've come. Ethan helped her sit up. Then we'll end it here. The Sentinels advanced slowly, weapons in hand. Their leader, taller, black armor gleaming like glass, and stopped in front of the others. Its voice was low, emotionless. Unit 7 Lyra, it said. Return to system control. Resistance is pointless. Lyra tried to stand, but her knees gave out. Ethan caught her before she fell. You'll have to go through me first, he said. The Sentinel turned its head slightly, scanning him. Human mechanic Ethan Cole, you are irrelevant. Ethan smiled faintly, though his heart raced. Guess I'll make myself relevant. He reached into his pack, pulling out a small device, a pulse detonator he'd built from scraps earlier. He pressed a button and the device started to hum. You know, he said, holding it up. You metal guys don't like EMP waves much, do you? The Sentinel tilted its head. You will die, Ethan grinned. So will you. Before the Sentinel could move, Ethan threw the device toward them. It exploded midair with a blinding flash, sending out a wave of blue-white energy. The shockwave hit the Sentinels, freezing them in place for a few seconds. Their red lights flickered violently. Ethan grabbed Lyra's arm. Now move. They ran toward the far end of the chamber, stumbling over debris. The power systems were overloading, steam hissing from vents, sparks bursting from walls. Every light in the room flickered, a countdown to destruction. Lyra looked back. The detonation sequence. You started it. The whole place will collapse, Ethan nodded. That's the plan. But you'll die too. He looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. Then I guess we're both bad at staying alive. She wanted to argue, but there was no time. Behind them, the Sentinels began moving again, their systems slowly rebooting. Ethan and Lyra reached the old control bridge, a raised platform overlooking the huge, rusted train tracks. In the center was a glowing console, still running despite its age. Ethan slammed his hand on the controls, trying to activate the train. Come on, he muttered. The console flickered. The screen displayed words in old code. Power reboot in progress. 30 seconds remaining. Lyra leaned against the wall, clutching her chest. The blue light in her armor was flickering rapidly. Ethan, she whispered, the signal. It's spreading. He turned to her. What do you mean? My armor. It's connected to the network again. It's pulling power from this place. The self-destruct won't complete unless I cut the connection manually. Ethan froze. And that means... Lyra looked up at him, her eyes calm. I have to stay. He shook his head instantly. No, I'm not leaving you. Ethan, she said softly, stepping closer despite her weakness. You've already saved me once. You gave me a choice. Now let me save you. He grabbed her shoulders. There has to be another way. She smiled faintly. There isn't, you know that. Behind them, the sentinels were climbing the platform. The leader pointed at them, voice cold. Termination sequence engaged. Ethan's breath shook. He wanted to fight, but Lyra gently pressed her palm against his chest. Please, she whispered. Go, he didn't move. He just looked at her, really looked at her. And in that moment, he saw not a machine, not a weapon, but a person. Someone brave, someone who deserved more than war. Slowly he nodded. You better not disappear completely, he said, forcing a small smile. Lyra's lips curved into a soft smile. You know me. I always leave a trace. She turned toward the console, placing both hands on it. Blue energy surged from her armor into the system, spreading like lightning through the wires. The whole chamber glowed with her light. Ethan stepped back, eyes wide. The sentinels tried to reach her, but their bodies began to freeze mid-step as her energy overpowered them. Their red eyes dimmed one by one, fading into silence. Lyra screamed softly as the power built inside her, her body shaking under the pressure. The room started to collapse. Metal beams fell from the ceiling, sparks flying everywhere. Lyra, Ethan shouted. She turned her head just enough to see him. Thank you for fixing what was broken. The light from her armor exploded outward, engulfing the entire chamber in blue fire. The shockwave threw Ethan back, knocking him unconscious. When he woke, everything was quiet. Dust filled the air and the floor was covered in rubble. The red lights were gone. The sentinels were gone. Ethan struggled to his feet, coughing. Lyra! He called out weakly. No answer. He limped toward where she had been standing. The console was melted, its surface cracked and glowing faintly. Lying beside it was her armor, empty, broken open like a shell. Ethan knelt beside it, his heart sinking. He picked up the small glowing core that rested inside the armor. Still pulsing softly with light, he held it close, whispering, You said you'd leave a trace. Outside, far above the tunnels, the city lights flickered, and for a brief moment, one light shone brighter than the rest, blue, steady, and alive. Ethan looked up through the cracks in the ceiling, a small smile on his tired face. Be careful, he whispered, wherever you are. And somewhere faintly, as if carried by the wind, he thought he heard her voice answer, I always am. The chamber fell silent again, the last light of Lyra's energy fading into the dark. But Ethan knew the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because deep inside the glowing core he held, a single word appeared, flickering in tiny blue letters. The tunnels were quiet again. The air was thick with dust, and the soft blue glow from the small core in Ethan's hands was the only light left. Everything else, the machines, the sentinels, the sound of war, had vanished. It was like the world was holding its breath. Ethan sat on the cold floor, staring at the glowing sphere. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dirt and blood, but his eyes didn't move away from that faint light. Every few seconds, the core pulsed gently as if it was breathing. He whispered, You're still in there, aren't you, Lyra? The core didn't answer, but the pulse quickened, just slightly. Ethan smiled weakly. Yeah, I knew it. You don't quit that easily. He stood up slowly, wincing as pain shot through his leg. The explosion had torn apart most of the transport hub. The metal walls were half melted, and the ceiling above was cracked open, revealing the faint gray light of morning seeping through the dust. Ethan looked around. All right, he muttered. Time to get you out of here. He grabbed his tool bag, half burnt but still holding a few working gadgets, and started toward the broken tunnel leading upward. Each step echoed softly, and every sound felt too loud in the silence. After climbing through the rubble for what felt like hours, he finally reached the surface. The world outside was almost unrecognizable. The city skyline was distant and quiet, the smoke from the old battle finally fading. The air smelled of rain and metal. Above, the clouds glowed faintly from the rising sun. Ethan stood there for a long time, breathing in the cold morning air. Then he looked down at the core in his hand. Looks like we made it. He found shelter in the ruins of an old workshop, one of his old repair stations from before the war reached this part of the city. Inside, broken tools and rusted machines covered the tables. Dust lay thick on everything, but it felt safe. Familiar. He set the core gently on the workbench and took a deep breath. Okay, Lyra, let's see what's left of you. He connected a small cable from his wristband to the core. The screen blinked to life, faint static at first, then a small blue waveform flickering across it. System log. Detected, the device said softly. Ethan leaned closer. That's it. Come on. The waveform moved again. Then faintly, a voice, broken and distorted, came through. Then his heart stopped. Lyra, you can hear me? The waveform flickered more strongly now. Memory damaged. Core unstable. Rebuilding in process. He smiled through the ache in his chest. You did it. You stopped them. The voice paused. Did we survive? Ethan looked around the broken room at the silent world outside. We did. For now. The light from the core grew a little brighter, as if she was trying to smile through it. But then the waveform glitched again, and a warning flashed on the screen. Core energy dropping. System failure imminent. Ethan's smile faded. No. Stay with me, Lyra. I can't. Her voice whispered softly. The armor, it's gone. I have nothing left to hold me. He pressed his hand to the core, his fingers trembling. Then I'll build you a new one. I'll rebuild everything, the circuits, the frame, the link, all of it. Ethan, I mean it. He said louder, almost desperate. You're not just metal and code. You're more than that. You're real to me. There was a long silence. Then softly she said, You're still stubborn. He laughed weakly. You said it yourself, unloyal fool. The warning on the screen stopped flashing. The core's pulse steadied, as if his words had somehow anchored her. Ethan spent hours rebuilding her. He used spare parts from his machines, wiring from old drones and circuits from his repair tools. Slowly, carefully, he formed a small mechanical body. Not full armor, not a weapon, just a frame strong enough to hold the glowing core. When he finished, he placed the core inside. The room filled with a faint hum as the blue light spread through the frame. The small body trembled once, then stilled. Ethan held his breath. Lyra. The eyes of the frame flickered open, bright blue. She looked around slowly, her voice soft and unsure. Ethan, where are we? He laughed, a sound full of relief and exhaustion. Back where it all started. My workshop. Lyra tilted her head slightly, looking down at her new form. Small, incomplete, but alive. This isn't me. It's temporary, Ethan said. We'll fix it, together. She smiled faintly. You never stop fixing things, do you? He shook his head. Not the ones worth saving. They sat in silence for a moment, the faint sound of rain falling outside. The world felt calm again, for the first time in a long while. But then Lyra's voice grew quiet. Ethan, there's something else. He looked at her, concerned. What is it? The signal I released, and it didn't just destroy the Sentinels. It went further. It woke others, Ethan frowned. Others. Like me, she said softly. Hybrids who were lost, trapped in their systems. They'll start to wake soon. And when they do, they'll need guidance, or they'll be lost again. Ethan leaned back, staring at her in disbelief. You mean, there are more of you? Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, and they'll come. Some will be afraid. Some dangerous. But they'll come. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. Then I guess we've got work to do. Lyra's blue eyes shone brighter. You'd help them? After everything? He shrugged, smiling. You helped me. Seems fair. Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance. The city lights flickered again, faint blue sparks glowing on the horizon, tiny signals awakening. One by one, Lyra looked toward them and whispered, It's beginning again. Ethan picked up his tools, glancing at her. Then let's make sure this time. It begins right. Lyra turned to him, her voice gentle but steady. Be careful, Ethan, he grinned. Always am. The camera of the story would pull back then, showing the ruined city slowly coming back to life, sparks of blue light rising into the cloudy sky like fireflies. The old world was ending, but something new was starting, and in the middle of it all, a mechanic and a girl reborn from broken armor worked side by side, not just to survive but to rebuild a future from the ashes.